All right. So here are the numbers. I mean, this is where we're at this point. Michael, what is your perspective as to what Bernie should do going forward? I mean, assuming that there is, I don't know what the percentage is, 10% chance, 15% chance, 20% chance, I don't know, 40% chance that he could pull it out. What should he do? What should his disposition do? What should he do in the debate?
Well, I mean, he's holding a press conference at 1, so maybe this advice will become irrelevant. But look,
do you think he's going to drop out at 1? I don't think he will.
I don't think he will either.
Do you think he's going to say, I'm definitively going to the convention?
I don't think he's going to say that either. I think he's going to demand a debate. And I think he's going to say that there's some very important states that need to vote and we need to play this out. And I think, you know, I think he can't keep playing halfway. I think that he does need to say tastefully as is possible. But, you know, look, if you're concerned about winning, if you're concerned about how to actually do this in a general, I don't think the guy I'm running against is exactly up for doing this. I think he does need to convey that. And I think more generally, I don't know how they do this, but I think that they have to have some type of actual demand. And it's very hard because, look, Bernie's going to, if it's Biden, he's going to endorse the Democratic nominee. Bernie is not somebody who wants to risk a second Trump term. And, you know, people should not castigate him for that. But I think, frankly, this is the contradiction I can't reconcile myself. Even as I wish he'd much more talked about the FDR stuff and said, look, if you want normalcy, you need reform, and really tried to kind of synthesize the anxieties that people have with his deeper message. I also think there does need to be a certain, like, he should have been saying every day for the past couple of weeks what he said a couple months ago. Trump will eat this guy's lunch. And if I drop out and if I encourage millions of people, and maybe we didn't hit all of our targets, but we got a hell of a lot of votes and we're the only one resembling a kind of turnout operation. If you want them, it's not about a platform. It's not about this and that. I want VP. I want a policy commitment, not for me personally, but I want, you know, I'm not saying it will work, but I think that needs to be more of the mentality, because this game of you go for it, then it's totally blocked out. And then we're just back to like, okay, it's Biden and Kamala. You know?
Here's the problem, right?
There's tons of problems.
No, but I'm just saying in terms of like this whole leverage thing, in terms of like, I want VP or I want whatever it is.
Yeah.
How do you, as Bernie, actually deliver on that threat?
Well, he would have run right. He needed to say, I mean, this is what I'm saying.
But I'm saying, like, if you go to Biden and say, like, look, I'll end this tomorrow, but I want X, Y, or Z, and you Biden says, sure.
Well, he's going to need
right.
Bernie's help.
That's true. I mean,
he's going to need.
I think if Bernie's
but how does Bernie not help?
I think if they, this is where I'll be provocative. Help. I think if they spent, I read I forget where I read this, but that in 1996, this is unbelievable to me, that the Bill Clinton campaign was afraid of Ralph Nader in 1996 because they thought it could be a point or two in California. That's a time where the left is totally not on the map. It's a campaign that will get max 2% of the national vote, and they're still scared. I'm not saying this will happen, but if I was mapping strategy, I might say, you know, Joe, I think you have basically promised to you've literally said you will veto single payer. You are campaigning against.
He didn't say that. He just said he wouldn't sign it.
Oh, right.
I'm joking.
Excuse me. Exactly. I'm sorry. Apologies to Josh Marshall. So, you know, what I have said the last several months might not be operative. And I might need to look at a third party campaign. I might not be able to and I have to tell you, as much hate as he would get if he did that, the dynamic would certainly change. Because when you go from, we're going to box you out in the Democratic primary, that's obviously achievable, to I will use my platform. But does Bernie
Sanders want to go down in, like, personally, like, as the guy who who made it possible for Donald Trump to win?
Well,
I
it'd
don't
be a
think-
flex.
I don't think
He doesn't want to actually have to do it.
No, I understand, but I'm saying that, like, if I'm Joe Biden, I'm going to look at Bernie Sanders and go, you're coming at me and you're going to, in any way, I mean, look, you can even say to me, Joe, I'm going to be so subtle that nobody will know except for you that I'm enabling Donald Trump to beat you. And I would look at, and if I'm Joe Biden, and I'm actually conscious of the conversation, I would say
you're giving Joe Biden a lot of cognitive capacity.
I just assume for a moment, play along. I would just be like, Bernie, I don't believe you. I don't believe that you've spent your whole life where your final, like, biggest political act will be to make Donald Trump win. Sorry, bud. I know you're going to go out and kick ass for me because
and this is the major,
you care about the people you like.
And this
sorry,
is the major,
dude.
And this is the major problem on the left. Like, if you ask me honestly, look, I would say if it's just dispersed, I'll be really clear. I am not going to spend time like I did in 2016 policing and cajoling people. I'll always say if I was in a swing state, I'd vote against Donald Trump, but I'm not doing the work of the Democratic Party in this election. I'll be very clear about that.
That's reasonable.
But beyond that, I think that, if outside of silly gesturing, and I know Sanders' answer to this, but I think the paradox is you don't want to be the person that helps Trump get a second term. You also don't want to be the person that basically forecloses on any type of possibility of real actual reform. And I think especially when you add climate to it, we are getting to a point where, the conversations about like who staffs the NLRB or whatever, they're important. We shouldn't be children about them. But we're getting to a point where the viability of even playing these games on the margin is starting to become its own form of irrationality.
I agree,
so if I'm Sanders, I would honestly be sitting and looking at, is there an actual play here that at the very, maybe it just even forces them to call my bluff. And you know what? Fine, so be it. But let's make them sweat. Let's make them scared. Let's make them really work here. And frankly, to me, that's kind of the choice, because this is something that's annoyed me from the beginning of the campaign, beginning with all the unity talk between Sanders and Warren. I think if you go into this election with your baseline being that the only thing that really matters is beating Trump, you shouldn't criticize any of these people. You should be nice to Biden, you should be nice to Bernie, you should be nice to Tulsi, right? But if there's an idea that this is still actually a conflict, particularly one with like serious life and death stakes, and I think there is clearly, you might need to push the throttle a bit and as I say, at least force them to call your bluff.